First time I made a video in a long while. Good to see you all again. Sorry, I know this isn't exactly a great setting to do a video in, but it's dark, so I can't do it with my main setting over there where I usually do. I've been really busy with my job. In the last some months, I started a new job with Spectrum, and to be honest, it really sucks. And I've been also just having trouble with finances because my new job doesn't pay super well, and I was unemployed for 3 months before coming here. So there's just been all sorts of headaches to deal with, and not that that's necessarily a reason I can't make videos, but it's enough to just keep me so flummoxed in life that you just have trouble keeping up with everything. So hopefully in a month or two I'll be into a new job role, and hopefully my finances will fully be stabilized by the end of this year. So hopefully I greatly look forward to my life going back to normal, trust me. But anyways, enough about that. Now for the reason of this video. I recently came across a new channel. As you all probably know, I've been making a lot of What If Alt His reaction videos, and I'm getting kind of bored with What If Alt His, to be honest with you. I mean, I have nothing personally against him. In fact, sometimes I kind of personally like certain aspects of the guy that makes those videos. However, I disagree with a good chunk of his views, but I'm starting to just lose interest. However, I did run across a recent video and a recent channel that is basically exactly what I used to hate about What If Alt Hist's channel, and that is called Pax Tube. Pax Tube is even worse than What If Alt Hist in most regards. He's a religious, right-wing conservative YouTuber. In many ways, he's a pseudo-intellectual like What If Alt Hist. The only difference is, whereas What If Alt Hist does make a effort to be honest and fact-based in most of his opinions, though he is heavily opinionated and he goes far too far in many cases, Pax Tube really doesn't even make an effort to hide his bias. In fact, he just lies numerous times in his videos. And they're well done enough, though, that a person who doesn't know better will not be able to tell. And it shocks me and stuns me how many people I see that will agree with him in his comments about these extremely, extremely dangerous opinions, such as one I'm going to be commenting on today called Why the Sexual Revolution Was Worse Than You Think. That's his title, not mine. And as its title suggests, it's kind of a commentary on why everything is wrong with modern dating and relationships. And this covers a lot of things, though, like historical topics as well. So that's why I chose this one, even though some other ones he's made are of more interest to me overall. But today, just as a good starting ground, I think this one captures my issues with this guy. And so I'm going to be going over kind of a list of things that I made that were wrong with this video. He basically makes the case that, morality peaked in the United States in the early 20th century or late 19th century. Then the sexual revolution happened and everything went to pot. And he makes a bunch of other weird points in his videos, like that the founding fathers were wrong because they promoted liberty and did not establish Christianity as the state religion, which is something you don't hear very many people say. I'm kind of shocked that he even has the courage to say that. In some ways, a little impressed, but in a frightening way. But probably the worst thing that he tried to make in his video that I think that one of the things that stood out to me the most was about how he says everything is permissible in the modern day world, whereas we used to live in a good moral age, where a good Christian morality kept everything in place. Well, that's just okay. Well, let's just, before I even say anything, let's just take a look at modern norms of what's considered good and bad within the United States. And if you're not in the United States, I don't mean this to exclude people in other countries, but this is just for the sake of the video. We have to focus mostly on the United States since that's what he's commenting on. He talks about how divorce was much more uncommon in olden days, how porn was much more restricted, how there was much fewer incidences of rape, and this was because we did not tolerate these things. Okay, well, the only one of those that I can see that was viewed as bad both then and now is rape. But rape is actually far, far more aggressively targeted in society these days than it used to be. Some would even argue maybe a little too much. Now, that may sound weird saying that, but, I mean, for instance, one reason why Sweden has one of the highest rates of rape and amongst any countries you'll see is just because what we consider to be rape and what a liberal country like Sweden considers to be rape is much, much, much greater than in some other countries that have much more loose definitions of rape. Some countries do not consider marital rape to be rape, or do not consider, or just much more, well, that's one of the big ones, is just marital rape. But there's a lot of ways that other countries and the United States used to not define certain things as rape. It's not that rape has gone up in commonality. And divorce, well, if you think divorce is not the problem, okay? Bad relationships are the problem. Divorce is just simply a route people take. And perhaps the divorce rate is too high, I don't know. But, one thing I can say is that probably there's a lot of people that shouldn't have been getting married to start with. And back in the olden days, marriage was not based off love or happiness. It was an economic arrangement. So there's a lot of reasons why divorce and singledom are more common. Porn, what can I say? We live in the day of the internet. And to be honest with you, as somebody who once was in that hyper-restrictive camp of trying to control everything you say and do, I can promise you it doesn't make your life all happy and wonderful trying to obsess 24/7 about what you look on the internet. And second of all, religious people look at it anyways, and all you're doing is just fighting a natural behavior. In moderation, it's like many things in life, like alcohol, TV, so many things. In moderation, it's not bad. In excess, it can be dangerous. Okay, that's just the best way I know how to put it. And yeah, it's kind of weird to talk about porn in much more depth than that, but I'll just talk about it a little. But some things I also noticed in this video that were really just outrageous that I wanted to comment on, that just made no sense to me at all. He talked about how, World War I created nihilism, and it brought European civilization crashing down, which allowed liberalism to seep in, which is a very strange point to make, given that World War I, the only country that arguably weakened was Great Britain and maybe Germany in the short run. But then they both, were definitely still in pretty good working order by the time World War II rolled around. Germany in particular, at least in the military sense, it revived itself. Russia became the Soviet Union and was military and economically a match for what it had been. I'm not saying that World War I was a positive thing, but he tried to say that it created nihilism in the world, which, as someone who talks about nihilism on occasion on my channel, you all know that I find that to be honestly just kind of ridiculous, and I don't know. I just thought that needed to be commented on. Another thing, a statistic that he quoted that was very interesting is that he talked about how certain evil practices are on the rise in the modern world, one of which is violent crime, which he says, and if the statistics he showed were accurate, which I strongly doubt, he showed violent crime peaking around 1970 and then going down since then, which of course he attributed to evil liberal morality, which wouldn't make sense at all, because with society gradually getting more liberal, wouldn't that make sense that we'd be gradually getting more violent? If anything, violent crime has been on the decrease for some decades now. Now, I don't know exactly how you measure all of that. There's different measures by which violent crime's gone up and down, and it depends what state and what crime you're talking about. But on the whole, violent crime has been going down for a long time in the United States and on the whole in the world. And, of course, if it was going up, conservatives would use it as a reason to say why everything is completely evil and wrong with the world. But I think there's a lot of reasons for that are not because of atheism or religion or because of a lot of things. I think there's just, for lack of a better word, I think society's getting a little bit more civilized. I mean, I know that sounds stupid given how some people act in the modern world, but let's face it, we live in a much more cushy world than we used to. Violent crime is going down probably just because of that. I don't know. I'm trying to be as honest as I can here. I don't think everything has to be a political issue, But anyways, another point, another thought that was interesting is he said one reason that conservatism has been on the decline is because conservatives were so busy fighting communism in the Cold War era that they were not being authoritarian because they didn't want to be like communists, which if you know anything about McCarthyism, you know that is a joke. You know, McCarthyism and all the anti-communists gave them a reason to prop up right-wing authoritarian thinking out of fighting the communist Soviet Union. And it gave them a reason to hate atheists and socialists and basically everybody that disagreed with American ideas. You know, no, communism did not fuel libertarianism. I don't know how to say it other than it just didn't. If anything, it gave rise to more right-wing nationalist thinking, like putting in God we trust on the money and trying to make everything in society anti-communist. So that shows his ignorance that he would even say that. But there was a lot of things in this video that were, you could tell, ignorant points, but would take a lot of work to try to say why they were ignorant, such as, you know, but I'll just kind of, you know, sum up the basic, you know, gist of it rather than go into the details. He basically tries to make the case in this video that America was, you know, good, I guess, in the 19th century and evil in the 20th century. And the main reason for that is because we ascribe to an extremely conservative form of Christian morality. And the reason this is simple, and some of the things he describes as being good about the old way, is he talks about how bestiality, homosexuality, cross-dressing, pedophilia, all these things were wrong back then but are supposedly okay now. Well, the only one of those, you know, homosexuality and cross-dressing are mostly accepted, I guess you could say now in the modern world. But, you know, the main thing that I would say about this list that he makes is that, you know, those latter three are very much considered wrong in the modern world, you know, and he, you know, in fact, they're much more ostracized than they used to be, you know. Take, for instance, I know this is a very uncomfortable one to talk about much, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I don't know if it's a topic I want to go in depth on, but, you know, pedophilia, you know, I mean, there's penalties have been going up. If you've ever watched To Catch a Predator, if you've ever watched from like the 90s and early 2000s, it's amazing how light some of these people get off because of how our laws really don't punish people like that. But you can see as you look throughout, you know, the years, the punishments legally for crimes against underage people have gone up dramatically. The legal age of consent has gone up. Most things have gone up, all of which I agree with and are good things. I'm not saying that all of pedophilia was tolerated necessarily in the past, but a lot of things back then were, you know, as you go back in the years, were not nearly as heavily scrutinized as they are now in that regard, in terms of, you know, people doing things with underage persons. You know, when you look at things that, you know, former celebrities did, when you look at things that, I don't know how to say it, but they're just, there's a lot of stuff that there was the modern support channels that we have today to deal with problems like that. The same is true about things like, you know, rape and, you know, things like that. That's why they're much more reported and they're much more heavily focused on. I mean, bestiality. I mean, there's much greater protections for animals than there used to be, you know. I don't know what to say. I mean, that's most of this is just common sense, you know. I mean, I can't give you a detailed analysis on why all this has changed over this 20th century because I don't have a detailed analysis of it, but I can just tell you it is just simply ridiculous to try to say that these things were not tolerated back then and they are tolerated now, you know. And then he goes off on, you know, some other rants in this, you know, like how I think, about how contraception was where it all went wrong, because then that's when sex became about pleasure and not reproduction. Well, that's just idiotic. Okay, contraception, it helps give women reproductive rights. It helps avoid unplanned pregnancies, and yes, maybe it does add more pleasure to it. But to try to say that it's evil and that it is wrong and causing immorality is honestly just stupid. I don't even know what else to say. It's just stupid. I'm not going to go super heavy on the topic of abortion because that one's a very, very controversial topic, but we'll just say this. Abortion is not murder, and I will stand my ground on that one fully. It is a controversial medical procedure. Some people believe it should be restricted. Some people should believe it should be totally legal in all forms. I lean more on the side of kind of in the middle, with a little bit more on the side of being somewhat legal in most forms. But whatever the case is, I can say this: it is a controversial medical procedure. Saying that deaths from abortions are the same thing as like military deaths is a stupid comparison. It's no different than saying people who die from obesity or heart disease are being killed off by McDonald's, or McDonald's has their blood on their hands. It's just not. Okay, maybe indirectly McDonald's does, maybe indirectly abortion does kill people, but it is a medical procedure, not murder. But that's all I'm going to say on that. But anyways, where I'm just going with all this is that, this kind of stuff that Pax Tube talks about on his channel and the other videos I'm going to talk about are in many ways what I grew up with. They're the really, really conservative, historical, and social narratives of how wonderful the world was 100 or 150 years ago, and how evil the world has become because of all of the modern ways of thinking. And I used to believe a lot of this myself, but luckily by the time I'd gotten basically up into my late teen years to early 20s, I began to at least push back on some of it, and now I push back on a whole lot of it because both life experiences and thinking and reevaluating my positions taught me things. I mean, for just one personal example of what I mean on all this is that I would say that well, as a lot of you know, I have not been overly successful in my dating life, and sometimes you wonder, would life be better if you were married or not? And I'm strongly convinced that the answer to that one is no. Now, I mean, if I had gotten married young in a good relationship, and maybe been married now, I mean, yeah, life probably, a good marriage and a good relationship is better than none at all. But the fact that I'm 33 and have hardly dated at all is probably a sign that I would have been horribly suited to a marriage very early on in life. I would probably have been very immature and probably not ready for it. It would have probably been very likely with a girl that I was not well suited to. And, I look back and I'm very glad in many ways that I never, I guess, got married at an early age, and that I didn't just marry someone because I felt it was the right moral Christian thing to do. I imagine now if I becoming an atheist and having the views I have, that would greatly have complicated whatever relationship I had. I don't confess to know everything about dating or relationships or history or anything, but common sense as well as just critical thinking is what led me away from a lot of these perspectives. And the sad thing is I can see that Pax Tube is smart enough to at least somewhat understand a lot of why what he's saying makes no sense and is just his own biased and hateful perspective. But he doesn't have any amount of critical thinking or reflective analysis to be able to push back against his own bad thinking, which is really irritating. And it's why I'm going to be focusing more on his channel and a lot of other videos he does, because I think this channel represents everything that I'm kind of about pushing against. And since I'm getting bored with What a Faultist, I think it'd be a good thing. I'm going to spend some new YouTube videos making, assuming my life, allows me. So thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Bye.